So we're moving on to the next part of the program. If you take conversations outside, but apparently not. So instead of going right into our next speaker, Chip asked me to actually make some comments about some of the work that's happening at the policy level, and I know there's going to be other policy presentations, but some of the work that we've been doing that fits in with this discussion we just had about divesting and investing in that transition. So I'm at Colorado State University. I run a center called the Center for the New Energy Economy. My work is, the core of our work is with states on clean energy policy around the country. But a year ago, I was asked by the White House to convene stakeholders around 5 issues: renewable energy, energy efficiency, utility business models of the 21st century, alternative fuels for vehicles, and natural gas rules, and then to make recommendations to the White House about what the President of the United States could do and executive agencies within the federal government could do without congressional action. And this was part of the President's climate plan, and understanding the premise that Congress was not going to move in a meaningful way on congressional action around energy over the rest of President Obama's presidency. So what we did was convene stakeholders in Washington, D.C. Actually, we were hosted by the Aspen Institute, and we made 200 recommendations to the White House on how the federal government could drive a clean energy agenda over the next few years with President Obama as the president. If a presidential candidate running in 2016 wanted to look at how to just have a sort of a federal plan on executive action on clean energy, our document and our recommendations provide that as well. So it's called Powering Forward, and what I would tell you is we believe that the federal government is this important player, that as long as Congress is stalemated, that executive action is critically important. Today there's a meeting in the White House. It flows from some of our recommendations around natural gas, which was that the White House should lead a methane reduction strategy, a national conversation on reducing methane leakage in the natural gas, both the extraction part of it, the transmission, and anywhere along sort of upstream, downstream, midstream. And they're having their capstone meeting after 4 different meetings on how to really reduce methane across the transmission of it in the natural gas sector. So anyway, we made these recommendations. The executive agencies were already doing a variety of very important things. The President and his team were involved in a variety of very important ways on addressing climate through their energy actions, but there's a lot that can be done at the federal level. Certainly, Congress acting in a meaningful way would be important, would be vastly important, but it looks like that's not likely to happen. There have been a couple of bills that people had some hope for that would be, but at this stage would have already been signed into law, and they haven't made it out of the United States Senate yet. And so we're still hopeful that some things might happen, but it's not going to be comprehensive, and it's not going to address sort of how we need to change how we think about energy nationally through congressional action. So that means we turn to the states, and this is the core of our work. We did these recommendations for the White House, but so many of the recommendations were about how executive agencies needed to coordinate their work with the states. I'll just tell you where the states are concerned, there is both good news and bad news. Let's start with the bad news. States have done a variety of very important things in trying to move a clean energy agenda, both specifically renewable portfolio standards, also energy efficiency resource standards. There were 30 states that have those. But there's been a real effort around this country to carve those standards back or to eliminate them altogether. And so while we, think about renewable energy as part of our day, we need to understand that there is this battle that's happening in state houses across the country. And last year we took a look at this, and in all the states where they had introduced legislation, they had been unsuccessful. The people who were sort of opposed to renewable portfolio standards, trying to undo them, they had been unsuccessful throughout 2013. We thought the attention might shift to other things. It did slightly shift, but the battle around renewable portfolio standards did not go away. And so we've seen 2 states, Indiana and Ohio. Indiana eliminated eliminated their renewable portfolio standard. Ohio put theirs on a moratorium while they do a study of it, but it's been a long battle in Ohio trying to keep this from happening. And finally, sort of the powers that be in the Senate and the House succumbed. The governor signed the law. There's a moratorium on it, and it's just, for our purposes, you know, it's just a battle that I think has to be fought state by state by state by state. So many of the states are meeting their standards. They're meeting them early. They haven't had an impact on energy prices throughout the country. In Colorado, we have a 30% renewable portfolio standard, where the naysayers, even when it was 10%, the naysayers said it's going to cost too much, ratepayers are going to have to pay too much, you can't integrate it into the grid, that's way too much energy, renewable energy to try and put on the grid, it's going to be the downfall of, you know, the manufacturing economy in the state as we know it. None of those things were true. None of those things were true in Colorado, and largely, if you look at renewable portfolio standards, energy efficiency resource standards across the country, they have an impact that's positive from an economic perspective, been able to hold ratepayers to a place that's nearly harmless, and there has been a variety of ways of showing how it generates economies. In Colorado, Vestas, the largest wind turbine manufacturer in the world, they decided to put their manufacturing in Colorado, and they just announced that they're going to go to 2,800 jobs at their 4 manufacturing plants in Colorado. And so that kind of good news we see around the country. But there is this tension between folks who are still trying to unwind things at the state level. It's very important to pay attention to state policy because it is this driver, you know, and a driver along with the things that are happening at the federal level through executive action, through the White House, that actually allows us to have sort of the policy part of this, to see movement on the policy front. This last conversation was really about investing, divesting, and you don't think these, I mean, you have to understand these are tied. Let me just explain this real quick. Our work now that we're doing is with the 13 western states, the Pacific Northwest, and California, and the Dakotas around the EPA rule on carbon. So we're convening those states. You can imagine, this is difficult politically. There's a variety of Republican governors who have been a little bit harsh when the rule came out. There are a variety of Democratic governors that are pretty supportive, but you take a Governor Bullock in Montana, where the coal economy is very important. He's trying to figure out, okay, how do we go forward on this? But Governor Matt Mead, the governor of Wyoming, who has the largest coal-producing state in the country, gave a speech about 3 or 4 weeks ago where he said, let's just, for the purposes of argument, assume I'm wrong about climate. Because he's been a climate denier. He said, let me tell you why I think we have to talk about this, because the markets are telling me I'm wrong. And so to the extent we think about public policy and think about the markets, understand that they're not separate conversations. They're absolutely tied together. And the recent work of the EPA, Gina McCarthy and I met with the Western governors, and Gina McCarthy said, listen, this is not the climate solution, the new EPA rule. It's one thing, but it's a very important thing. And it's a public policy coming from the federal government through the Environmental Protection Agency that moves us closer in our effort to try and create this clean energy economy across the country and try and reduce our carbon emissions and get to a place where we're on the road to doing the things we need to do by 2050 or 2035. You pick the date. But the fact of the matter is, this investment-divestment situation, or the discussion around policy and the discussion around technology are all part of the same conversation. And we can't leave any of them out. So pay attention to what's happening at the state level. Pay attention to what's happening in state legislatures as a part of your interest and your concern about not just renewable energy, but energy efficiency, natural gas rulemaking, utility business models, and the transition that needs to happen for us to have truly a clean energy economy. So that's my, I think, 5 or 7 minutes. Now I have the great pleasure to introduce our next keynote speaker, Mo Abdou. He's the founder of 33 Voices, Inc. He's worked for over 25 years helping founders and senior executives navigate the complexities of growing a business by uncovering contemporary solutions to their pressing challenges. 33 Voices, Inc. is a knowledge platform designed to help entrepreneurs build smarter companies. His daily interview series has given him unparalleled access to more than 1,100 of the world's most influential thinkers, including Russell Simmons, Peter Guber, Tim Draper, Daniel Pink, Roger Martin, Maria Clough. Abdou spent 24 years As managing partner for New York Life's Washington, D.C. region, he recruited over 750 financial advisors, developed a sales and leadership team that consistently ranked in the top 1% of the industry, and facilitated over $1 billion of insurance and asset management transactions for an affluent roster of clients. Mo, thank you for being here.
And Chip, thank you. Sally, thank you for this opportunity and for the opportunity to bring this community together, because I know what it takes to put on one of these events. Because all of these solutions that we're trying to come up with, I don't know how many of us are going to be around to see all of this stuff happen. It's this next generation that I think is going to really bring it about. So I want to take a step back a little bit and just share with you what gets me up in the morning more than anything is the opportunity that I get to contribute to the success and well-being of individuals. And for some reason, I'm particularly drawn to this generation of emerging leaders and emerging entrepreneurs. So after 24 years of working in the areas of finance and financial services, I got the urge in 2006 to do something totally different, to try to get into the world of technology. So I left Washington, D.C., and I went to Southern California, and the goal was really simple. I wanted to build a platform where we can bring together the world's most progressive thinkers, the world's best business builders, and have them share their knowledge, share their resources, and most importantly, to collectively work together to improve the odds of success. In working in the financial industry, I saw a lot of businesses with tremendous potential fail because of lack of resources. So our goal at 33 Voices was, hey, can we build a platform where people can come, share their knowledge, and share their resources? And I want to highlight 3 such individuals today that will reinforce these lessons and will also reinforce why this generation, I think, could make a tremendous contribution to our climate objectives here. Now, before I do, I just want to take a quick poll. Can I just see a show of hands of anyone in the room who's under 30? Anyone under 25? Well, ladies and gentlemen, herein lies our greatest opportunity. This room, half of this room should be the millennial generation, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. Let me take you back a few months. Yes, sir. But you look young. You'll always look young. That's what the hair does it. I want to take you back to a conversation a few months ago that I had with an individual by the name of Aaron Hurst. Aaron wrote a book recently called The Purpose Economy. Anybody familiar with it here? If you haven't, please put it on your reading list. I think you'll find it very important. And as I was speaking with Aaron about the early corporate reception of the imperative that he had, halfway through our conversation, he stopped me. And he said, "You love what you do, don't you?" And I said, "How did you guess?" And he said, "Because I hear it in your voice." So he stopped and he said, "Why do you love what you do?" And I said, "Every day, I get to speak to people like you. And then I take what I learn and I share it with others. And most importantly, I'm learning every day." And he paused again. He said, "You've just unlocked and decoded the science of purpose." And he said, purpose is misused around the world. Lots of people doing a lot of things around it. He said, but if you stop for a moment and think about these 3 things, building enriching relationships, being involved in work that's greater than yourself, and most importantly, always learning. He said, that's when you know you're living your purpose. Now I ask you, when you know you're living your purpose, how do you feel? Because I get the sense that everybody in this room is tied to this purpose in some way, shape, or form. Now, purpose also happens to be the defining characteristics of this generation. You poll millennials in any town in the U.S. or around the world, and they'll tell you that the #1 reason that they go to work is because it has meaning. And I want to share a story with you. I want to demonstrate the power of purpose with the story of this company called Pencils of Promise. Anybody heard of the company Pencils of Promise? Aaron Braun's a friend. And here was a young guy, a young individual who grew up in Connecticut with the dream of getting to Wall Street. And at 16 years old, Adam started to take internships at hedge funds to learn the industry. He ended up going to Brown and ended up playing basketball at Brown University. However, he decided to take a pause his academics in his senior year and study a semester at sea. Typically, semesters at sea at Brown are in the spring. But as fate would have it, this time they had an opportunity to do it in the fall. And the reason being is there was a brand new ship that they had an opportunity to christen. Now, I don't have a time to go through the entire story, but that ship would never return. And they were hit by a 60-foot wave, tidal wave, that, as Adam would mention, not only was it kind of one of those moments where you get to recognize the importance of life, but it was a certain opportunity of dying. They obviously lived, but he made a commitment when he got back that his goal was to backpack around the world and to ask children one question. More than anything, what is the one thing that you would want most in the world? Of course, he got young children saying dolls and cars and I want to be wealthy. But one day when he was in India, a young child said, I want a pencil. Just a pencil. And that moment not only changed Adam's life, but it changed what the company Pencils of Promise forever. He came back with the mission that a pencil could be a tool for empowerment. And on his 25th birthday, he opened up a bank account with $25. And he said, I'm going to go to all of my friends, and we're each going to put $5 and $10 increments, and we want to build schools around the world. Well, I can tell you that in 2008, when the company was launched, it's now 6 years later, they have built 229 schools around the world. They have educated 30,000 children, and more importantly, they have delivered more than 15 million educational hours, all with zero advertising and with micro contributions of $5 to $10. I encourage you to see their story. So, for this generation, purpose matters. Number two, this generation is interested in saying yes to moonshots. They want to do the impossible. To them, incremental change is not exciting. They want to change the world. It isn't a cliche for them. And very quickly, I want to take you back to Aaron Hurst. And I invite you to take a look at what Aaron has done. But being in Silicon Valley in the early 2000s, Aaron got excited about the opportunity he saw in social entrepreneurship. But the one thing he noticed was those bright individuals who had amazing visions lacked resources. So like most people who live in Silicon Valley, he tried to find a solution. His company is now called Taproot, that he founded in 2001. His solution was simple. I'm going to lobby professionals and big corporations, and I'm going to ask them to donate their services. So now, Taproot, in America alone, pro bono services to social entrepreneurs is over $15 billion a year. So if you had a mission and you knew you can get the resources of some of the smartest people in the world, I think that would ignite you to start a business or to follow your passion. The last thing I want to talk about is the importance of speed. This generation likes speed. I don't have time to get into the story I wanted to share with you, but they work in lean and speed. And they are called the doing generation because they love to experiment. They love to tinker. And the last thing I want to talk with you about that is I want to invite you to take a look and see what the company Lean Startup is doing. Because what Eric Ries has done with that has not only inspired millions of young people to start businesses, but more importantly, he's given them the formula to succeed. So as I walk off stage, I want to leave you with three things. Number one, trust these young people with your biggest problem. If you got a big challenge like we do in this room today, find one and trust them. Number two, I'd like you to adopt one. Adopt and mentor a millennial, somebody who's got a cause that he's working for or she's working for. Because they don't need your money, they don't need your relationships or your resources, and they don't need your ideas, but they need your wisdom. And then here's the most important thing that I learned from Adam and Aaron, that what this generation has learned boils down to 3 letters. GTS. Anybody know what GTS means? The next time you have a really big problem to solve, Google that shit. Okay? Thank you.